What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Sec Tech Podcast. We have an amazing episode for you today. Joined with me, as always, is my co-host, Ken. Ken, how you been, man?
Hey, Matt. Doing good. It's been the ongoing thing with my house remodel.
Yes.
And so the master bedroom finally got done, which was amazing. And they've done a great job. And so my living room now doesn't have any furniture in it. And so this is a little bit shameful, but I hadn't really been, I had been working out for pretty much every day for quite a while.
You were going hard.
Yeah.
Protein shakes, you were all in.
Exactly, doing the whole thing.
Yeah.
Well, so when everything was in my living room, I kind of didn't do anything because I couldn't get out the rowing machine and it just was kind of stressful. So I got it back out today. And oh my gosh, am I sore? Like I am just, it's been maybe a month since I was going hard on it every day. And now it's just, oh man, and I didn't even go nearly as, you lose it so quick.
Right. You're so right, man. I just started, jiu-jitsu back up. I had taken just 6 weeks but I was still lifting. I just, wasn't doing jiu-jitsu. Dude, I felt like I couldn't move this morning. It's funny how quickly, you can lose it, and especially at our age, it's tough to
you get
swallow.
older and it goes quick.
Yeah,
got to keep the pressure up.
I'm glad you brought up home remodels because I have a little nugget about home remodels, but I'm gonna save it for our guest. A little bit later. Just a little nugget I got from a client that I thought was really interesting and immediately made me think about you. So if you want to hear what that is, stick around because we have an amazing guest today. We're actually going to be talking with Clint. He is a project manager. He's been doing this over 10 years in the tech industry. And so we're going to talk about everything from, the meeting tech deadlines, working with different personalities, and just the whole bit. It's going to be an amazing episode. So we will be right back with our guest, Clint Miles. What's going on, Clint? Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Matt. Great to be here, and appreciate the invite and coming out and talking a little bit about project management in the tech world.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Clint. How long have you been? I know you've been doing this about 10 years.
Yeah.
How did you get into project management?
Yeah, good question. In about 2010, 11, I started traveling a lot. I was working in the manufacturing world, primarily with tier 1 automotive companies. And we were implementing logistics services, which in logistics services, much of that has to do with digging through data and helping them as a business.
Okay.
Because their data elements are so separated, which is one of the reasons they come in. They bring in Oracle, SAP, some of the big ones to do the job. I was focusing more on the line of transportation management. And so we would come in, we had an application we were installing in the process. And along with that, we were just doing all we could to try to connect all of the dots internally for them to pull back the data, give them visibility, optimization, and controls within their logistics network. So that was around 2010, 11. I was an account manager, basically doing a project manager job. So about 2012, I'm like, I'm going to kind of try to focus here a little bit better and just focus on what I was doing from a pure project management perspective, because I was doing all of the account management functions along with project management functions, and then also probably building out business processes and doing 10 different things. And sometimes when you're worth a smaller company, those are the things you're gonna take on yourself.
Yeah.
Which is add value. So in about 2012, then I really began to focus more on that project management side. And then in 2014, the company I worked for, I was really kind of the premier leader for project management. But
that's awesome.
But along with that, there were other things that I had to do too, challenges and helping with architecture and so on.
Yeah. So we've had account managers on the podcast. We've had some product owners on the podcast. But you're our first project manager. Can you take a little bit and maybe talk about the difference between those roles that it seems like there's some overlap there, and just kind of where does the project management hat fit into the overall tech scheme?
In project management, you are really responsible for the whole thing. We used to say from soup to nuts, the whole project, and executive level communications. Many times the product manager, they kind of just focus on that, what's being delivered. Is everything working okay around with that process? How's that looking? And again, in every organization, they may have a different structure for a product owner, but typically in my experience, they're really focusing on that item that's being delivered and what all goes into that place. I'm looking at that, but I'm talking to the COO, I'm talking to the CEO, I'm talking to the vice president, and I'm talking to the person that's actually doing the role. So I'm kind of talking at every level to help bring the thing together. So that would kind of be my feedback to you. It's just a higher level type of conversation than necessarily a product owner. Although, I mean, I have to put that asterisk in there. Every organization is going to be a little bit different how they see that. Then whether it's Scrum Master or these other Agile type functions, it can vary.
Yeah, so let's start there because I really wanted to talk to you about the intricacies of your role from the people side, because in any tech project, you have most likely, let's just say you're doing kind of a larger project.
Yeah.
You're the project manager, but you might have a product owner. You're probably gonna have a senior developer, maybe a senior data guy. All of those people,
Enterprise architect, tech analyst, BA.
And those leads are going to have an opinion from the tech side about the project. And then you're going to have executives and C-suites and all that. They have a, not only do they have an opinion, but they have the checkbook. So you have to manage so many personalities and just so many different, just personalities and opinions.
Yeah.
How do you keep a project on focus when you have so many voices coming into the project?
For me and how I approach project management, it's a lot like just general management in training and understanding. I mean, number one, you've got to be approachable. You've got to be an approachable project manager. I've met project managers over the years. They get the project handed to them. They go through the charter, and it's like they're just putting the hammer down. They run the thing like it's a military initiative. They're trying to get everything right, and they're just not the kind of people you want to be around. I've never taken, let's say that approach. I think that's not a healthy approach. I think number one, you got to show that you have an investment in the project personally. Number two, you are collaborative. You're very much collaborative with your team. You have to be approachable. And for me, at all levels, that really is a big key point to get people on your team at every level, executive level. They have to see you're invested. You're communicating with them. You have to give them the air that says, you know what, Clint's managing the project. If there's a problem, he's going to let me know. If there's something goes out of the way, he's going to let me know. So, when you start the project, the executives have something in their mind to say, okay, he's going to be done with this in September. But you and I both know, Matt, when you get down into the weeds, the enterprise architect guy comes and says, man, I'm sorry, Clint, but how these two structures are working together from this app to this app to Clint, I'm sorry, you're looking at 6 months. So you have to go in with some flexibility, take that information, and then kind of create the confidence back to the executive that this is, or what are your contingencies? How can you work around some of those things? So it's really kind of comes down to much of it is communication.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
really
bring
is.
that up every time. It is a huge key in every role.
Yeah.
You really need it. And going off of what Matt was saying, what do you think some of the biggest challenges that a project manager faces in his day-to-day, maybe compared to what like a developer or someone else that has a different role in the project?
I know I can speak from my standpoint, just my experience. There's a lot of drama in projects.
Sure.
Even people get angry with each other. I'm not doing this because she's not, if the work wasn't allocated properly, let's say if I put 10 items over on Krista's desk and only 5 items over on Lori's desk, Krista's mad because I gave her 10 and she's got 5. But some of that deals with the strengths of the people you deal with. It's not anything. You're not being, you're not being partial. You're not respecting the person. You're just saying, listen, I know you've got certain strengths and they've got certain strengths. So you have to try to work through that. You deal with a lot of drama, a lot of stuff coming back on you. I try to be as personal as I can with people. Even if I'm texting them, that's always that's kind of a side conversation. Calling them on the phone, letting them know, hey, it's okay. You're good. You're doing fine. But here's what we need to do. And just trying to keep the keep the wheels on the bus going round and round. So, that's a big one. Drama's big. Also, you have the surprises. Nobody told me about that.
Right.
And then many times you have a project where, and I've got some friends right now, they've got a project they got going on where let's say the upper level management who tried to scope out what was needed didn't have the right people in when they set up the budget and the project charter. And even some cases I've walked into, and to be honest with you, I'm in a project right now that there was not a formal project charter handed to me. So really, I'm not going into a project, I'm going into discovery.
Right. Yeah.
And so it becomes what they could say it's a waterfall, but I'm working in Agile.
Right.
So you've mentioned this term a couple of times, and I'm not super familiar with it, and so I'm guessing a lot of people maybe. But project charter, what do you mean? What is that? What do you mean when you say that?
Yeah, that is, and if you go through I don't know if you've heard of PMI, but PMI is your standard project management. I'll call it your knowledge base of everything project management should be, and that's how you should base it. They've got a really good working program put together. But whenever you talk about a project charter, I mean, that has in it has your requirements. This is a big word. You guys probably talked about this a lot. What is required? Not necessarily the how. That's where you come into some of the issues. But it tells you what is required for the project. It tells you who your stakeholders are. It gives you information and kind of a summary of the background of the project and why we're doing it, which is something that you have to evangelize to the team. Let me remind you, this is why we're doing it. And much of that is not communicated, which gets into change management, which is the role of this, the people side of change.
Right.
Someone has said that, project management is kind of like building the ark, but change management is getting people on it. And you can build the ark all day, but if you can't get the animals on it, you might be in trouble.
Yeah.
I've sensed that frustration over the years, and I'm sure you have too, even as you're kind of developing or creating projects, and you'll say, you know what, I spent 2 weeks on that, and nobody is using it.
So, kind of piggybacking off of that, I met with one of our clients recently, and we were talking about, we're going to go into a project, another project with this client.
Yeah.
And he said something to me that was so interesting. He said, he was a little hesitant. The reason why he's hesitant is because, he is pre-feeling stress about the project. And here's what he said. And I thought it was so good. I said, okay, well, what has you concerned? And this is what he said. And he said, and I'm going to read this because I thought it was just so funny. He said, tech projects feel like home remodels. They take longer than you say it'll take. They cost more than you think it'll cost, and they keep you there longer than you ever wanted to stay. Yeah. And I was like, wow, that is just such an amazing perspective.
Perfect.
Why do tech projects feel that way? Why is it that it feels like, there's this feeling that, you can never deliver on time. It's always going to cost me more. Right. There's always going to be, we all know there's going to be complications, but why is it that that's an industry standard for technical projects?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I read something sometime back, and it may have been a wrong number, but it said only about 20% of tech projects are on time. That could be low. Maybe it is a little bit higher than that, but it is very limited on how much of the overall projects in any company are being completed on time. In fact, the current place of business that I'm right now working in, when I got there, I just kind of casual conversation, I learned that most all of the projects were not on time, but actually had to be pushed out for various reasons. Right. Much of that is these surprises that happen. And there are cases that you can't do anything about it. Let me give you an example. Right now, I have a delay because there's an interface. I had to extend the project because there was an interface company. It's called DTC. It deals with bonds and loans and transferring money. They had to have an agreement with the current line of business. So we had to go, which nobody knew that. Why? Here's why. It's a people challenge. We had a new line of business, brand new manager, new people. They didn't know that this was required or what all would go into it. So that was a hurdle. So we extended out the project because we had to get the agreement. We had to set up the connectivity. Then you got to do testing. You got some UAT going on there. So in the process of all that, and this is not humorous because I'm not making light of it, but the location is based right now. They're based in Tampa, Florida. Well, what just happened in Tampa?
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
terrible.
A hurricane
Right.
is there. I was looking at the news this morning and I thought, goodness sakes, I was messaging with the representative for the interface, and he's like, his house is underwater. He was sending me pictures. So those are things that happen, at least in my experience. There's a lot of interface challenges, internal things where, the developer thought one thing, but then it came out, well, we didn't really have a proper schema. And I don't know, I don't know where this is at, and I don't know how to move the code. And and then also here's another one: turnover. And you could probably just
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Please go into that.
if we just went down the line, we could probably between us and our experience just begin to really nail down. Here's the top 5. But turnover in our industry is kind of a big one. I think I didn't watch all of it, but I believe that Brent was on talking about turnover in the tech industry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he said something like 18 months is the average length for a developer right now at a job, or 18 months to 2 years, something like that.
Yeah.
Very short, especially for historical standards where, people work 20, 30, 40 years at a company.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the tech is just not that way. It's an easy place to get burned out, to get angry, to get tired. Some companies don't realize that just the encouragement they need to put around people that are in tech, and then monies. Depending on what role you're in, if you can go and jump to another company and make another $25,000, you probably would do it. But the challenge is from one company to the next, and I mean even major companies I work for to smaller companies over the years. It's just the proper documentation and controls around that information being passed on to the next group of people that come in. It doesn't matter how big or small. It seems like it's a generic problem.
Yeah, I never thought about that, but it's so true, because let's say, you have a developer leaving.
Yeah.
They're going to put in their 2 weeks. That velocity in those 2 weeks 50% maybe, right?
Exactly.
They're going to tighten things up. They're trying to get out the door. It's going to take you 2 weeks to hire. You get in somebody, let's say they're experienced. You got to ramp them up. That takes another 2 weeks. I mean, that's 6 weeks where, what your optimal velocity was. You probably only hit 30% of that velocity over 6 weeks just from the turnover, right?
Yeah, and the tribal knowledge. Every developer has their own area of expertise within the code and within the technology that's being developed.
Right.
And if someone leaves, then now there's a gap. And and I'm guilty of this too. I'm sure Matt can empathize. We are not the best about documenting all the things that we know and all the nuance of the processes that are happening.
Yeah, and the reason is too because you're looking at your own timetable. Like even me in my day-to-day, I have so many meetings on a day-to-day basis, and sometimes you may not take down the note. I try to record everything I do just in case, and really I'll go back and listen to some of them and then try to just so I can speak intelligently to people who are above me.
For sure.
Write it down exactly what was being said. So many times you don't do it. It's not intentional. It's just part of the job, and you're on a timetable. There's some pressure there. You're doing something, then somebody else calls you, and you're like, do you honestly want me to change my priority on this? Okay. But here's what this means. So changing priorities, there's an additional level of stress. Some folks in tech, especially with the pandemic we had, more isolated to themselves. That's another thing to talk about, like approachability. You've got to create a collaborative team where you're approachable, where people feel confident to say something, even if it's bad, because really the bad information is the information you need to know.
Almost always, the hard conversation is the conversation you got to have.
Exactly, 100%. Yeah.
So I kind of want to shift gears. Before we were starting, I know that you're a pastor of a small church, I'm pretty involved in my church, and I get the sense that faith in tech is something that's it's a little bit awkward. Like there's quite a bit of secular people that have very strong opinions about faith. And so, how do you approach that? What would you say, maybe you can apply from your life in ministry to tech, and then also some of the challenges of dealing with this tech world that is, predominantly secular and a lot of times, really militantly secular.
Yeah, I think that in at least my working to build a bridge, if you will, with tech folks is first of all the fact that I do work a job and I'm a bivocational pastor.
Right.
That comes with certain benefits, but at the same time, as you know, there's a lot of challenges with doing that also too, even staying out in front of your people and ministering to them the way that you want to. But it does help build a bridge to that because, if you've been in the tech industry over the years, Comic-Con is big, Star Wars is big. I found that just, mutual respect and love and care for that person has opened up doors of conversation where you can talk about it. Many times it's just left at the conversation level, but I just pray in all of that that the Lord would use that and begin to work something in their heart and mind. God is doing something even beyond we could ever think or imagine, and I just put my faith in that when I have conversations with them. As far as my life and ministry in tech, it's really helped me to be more technical. Even though I'm project management, I've lived in this world and I really enjoy it. And so, like when it comes to like podcasts, like working with not OBS, maybe I'm working with OBS, or right now I'm working with Restream, or I'm always trying to put something together for sound. I meet at a conference center now each week, so it's tear down, set up, and so. There are frustrations that go along with that, but I've learned being a part of the tech world, just be patient. We'll try it again next week. Yeah. So those are some of the things maybe I've taken from working in the tech world, but it's exciting.
So really it just comes down to empathy, right? And, having been a pastor myself, and being in tech, I could really relate to that. It really just... At the end of the day, this is something you hear a lot in ministry, but it doesn't just apply to ministry. This is just a business principle. If you grab somebody by the heart, you'll always have them by the hand, right?
Exactly.
And you got to show them that you care about them.
Yeah.
And when you care about people more than the project, and they know that, they're always going to be there and willing to go into that project with you, go into, and especially when it gets stressful, when it gets hard, when it gets tight. That's when you really want to make sure that that person, that developer, that data analytics, whoever they are, just knows that before it's ever about anything, it's just that Clint, really cares about me. And
it is.
I think that opens
100%
up so much in the workplace because, I just to share experience from my world, 6 months ago. Like I had just a 2-week span of my life where, man, it was just a nightmare.
Wow.
I mean, I was just dealing with so many problems outside of it, right? Well, Ken and I are working together because we have a relationship and because Ken cares about me. I'm like, Ken, I know I'm not doing my job very well right now, but here's what's happening in my life. Right. And us being able to have that conversation, Ken knows why my velocity is down. It's not because I wasn't a good developer. It's not because I couldn't do the job. He knows that I'm just coming into work, having a tough time thinking about work.
Right.
And that's something that every employee should be able to come in and do. And that only happens when you create a atmosphere where, that person really knows that you care about them, you know?
And in my role too, if there are problems or challenges even with that person, I'm talking to their boss or I'm talking to executive management. So I help put them at ease too, to say, listen, I'm here. I got your back. I'm here for you. And if they can really sense that you care and you have their best interest, and I genuinely do. I genuinely care about the people that I work with, and I want us to win. It's a collaborative approach. It's a win for the team. And they know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the team mentality is it. My experience has been that there's quite a bit of there's quite a bit of variability in faith. You have, and I come from a place that's really, I think we're all kind of on the same page here, that it's really focused on loving people, focused on controlling your own behavior, and showing love to other people rather than, kind of. The finger wagging. I saw a clip the other day from old SNL of Church Lady. It's Dana Carvey. I'm dating myself.
Right. I remember. We're all dating. I think.
But there's that feeling that people have that when you are open about your faith, that's kind of what they think about, is that you're going to be, finger wagging at them. And so, have you had any experiences like that, or have you, for the most part, been able to be open and accommodating to people while simultaneously, really showing that love?
I can't really say that I had any situations like that where people were thinking that that's how I would approach. Many of the people I've worked with over the years, they don't have a whole lot of background or knowledge about the Lord.
Sure.
Even the Bible is some mysterious thing out there, and so it's really limited in a lot of areas I've worked in. So I don't have a whole lot of feedback when it comes to that, but that's a great question, But I would see that how people view ministry, more of this pushing on, bringing the hammer down. God always has the standard there, but thank God for the message of the cross.
That's right.
Through His grace and what He provided there, that we're able to come into a righteous standing before God. See, I'm preaching already now. You got
No,
me
I know. We
talking
got,
about it,
Well,
but
it's hard. It's
you're
hard to
spot
turn
on.
that off. No, absolutely.
it's
But I do just one, kind of shifting just back to the work, because I do think that one of the biggest dreads in tech, one of the hardest things in tech, is when you do get behind. Let's say you're supposed to ship in September. It's July, end of July, and there's no way we're even getting it out this year. How do you create an environment as the project manager where you need to communicate a level of urgency? You need to get this fast tracked and moving, but you can't burn people out either, or else you're just going to create more turnover, right? What's that balance like as a project manager?
It's a difficult balance. I fortunately, at least in my experience, I've had teams where I could at least get us all on the same page as far as what decision needed to be made. I can say, hey, probably 60 days ago, I had a situation come up where we were coming up on a go live for August the 21st. For releasing this new, it's a bond holder system, or it's a system for operating operations for bonds, and it's an application we're in the process of installing, and it came up that there are some things that we're just not going to meet this deadline. In my mind, and looking at it, my top three were like, nope, that ain't going to happen. I just kind of know it. So there's pressure on all sides. There's pressure on our executive management. There's pressure on our COO. Clint, you got to get this done. And that's coming from up above her. Mm-hmm. And that's being driven down to me. There's tension and stress below us. So for me, I just, kind of collectively put together a meeting and talk through each of the items with everybody. And, there were some strong opinions on both sides. At the end of the day, I think, that the project manager, through a collaborative effort, needs to make a decision and then do it. And it kind of puts the weight on you. I mean, the goal would be to try to take the pressure off of the people and put that pressure in your role. That's really why they pay you these big bucks. But
it reminds me of there's a story. I believe it was Joe Montana. They're in the Super Bowl. It's the fourth quarter. They're down. They got to go drive the ball, and it's just you can feel it's tight. It's tense, right? And Montana goes in the huddle and he looks over. He goes, "Is that Marilyn Monroe over there?" And he's just and the story is the moment they got in that, everyone was tense, and he comes in and he's just calm.
Yeah.
Right? Like this is just another game, and it completely eases everybody, and they go down, they end up winning the Super Bowl. Yeah. And that's how I think a lot about a project manager. And just to kind of combine the conversations we're having, that's where I just really see also, when you have faith, when you have that empathy, that ability to collect stress and communicate peace and empathy in the midst of all that turmoil, right? Because slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And when everybody is just calm, you're always going to move faster than if it's just, quick, right?
Yeah, or something funny you can put in that meeting. I try to keep things as light as I possibly can, something funny or show a funny picture or something when you're talking about, because you're really trying to take the stress off of them, like you said, and then communicate the peace out to them, even though you could be potentially stressed too. I'm like, Lord, I've got to hit this next go live. I can't go back to the COO and tell him I'm sorry. This is not happening again. But you do that. I think that's you're spot on. You're communicating what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough balancing act. You know, I kind of have a question about like how do you decide when's the right time to communicate upward with the people, the C-suite people and whatnot about potential problems? Like, is that something where as soon as you see here's the possibility of an issue, I want to immediately communicate that? Or is it more like, hey, let's try to get a handle on this. Let's try to understand it, you know, see if we can within the team smooth this over before we go up. What's your sense on the right way, or is it balancing act, you know?
It could be. My approach is the latter.
Yeah.
I'm not just going to go run to someone in executive management and talk about a challenge we're having at the moment until I have really worked through it with the team and found out, you know, is this something that's fixable or not? So I try to be really, really careful and cognizant of that, because another role I feel that I play in project management is to help people feel safe.
Yeah.
And at the executive management level. They know if I go to them, I've pretty much reviewed the situation, and I'm coming back to them with some honest feedback. However, you know, if you just go right to them when you see the problem, I'm gonna go tell mom and dad. You know, that's, in my opinion, not the right way to handle it. Let it simmer. Maybe it's a day, maybe 2 days. Get with your team, consider it, talk through it. And it could be, say, well, you know, I've got to write a script. I have to write that. Do you have to write that script? Oh, I do. Are you sure about it? Did you ask so-and-so? Well, we did. Let's ask. Come back. You know what? We didn't have to write the script. There you go. So that's actually a real scenario I'm thinking of in my mind right now.
Good.
So I give it 1 to 2 days if you can, but I wouldn't just go back to executive manager, whoever that quick. No.
Now, let me ask you one more. Because as a project manager, oftentimes from what I've seen, you don't necessarily have you have a lot of you have a strong voice within a team that doesn't necessarily always execute into responsibilities over the team. So let's say you have a struggling developer.
Yeah.
You know they're struggling. You as a project manager or someone on the hook, if their velocity can't get where you need it to go, you're going to know that.
Yep.
But you probably don't necessarily have the authority to fire that developer.
Correct.
You've got to go up top, right? And you've got to say, hey, so-and-so, it's just not working out, right? Man, what's that line like? Because, you know, you're kind of in that position where, you know, it's your job to raise the flag, you know, but, you know, it's not like necessarily you can take the action, right?
Yeah.
So what is the balance there in project management when it comes to, you know, really just trying to, you know, manage really kind of people's livelihoods, you know, without actually having to manage people's livelihoods, you know?
Yeah, it's a real challenge because many times, you know, you're dealing with middle managers who are over these other areas
Right.
in the developer arena. So it is very challenging. You know, I mean, it's kind of the old adage, you know, you got to go to them first. You got to sit down, you got to go to them personally and talk and say, listen, you know, this is what I need. This is the deadline. You know, can you do it? And if it's a, I can't, well, why? Well, I don't have the time. They put 2 and 3 other projects on me. And these are real cases. Sometimes you may think that your developer is lagging. They're not. They're doing 3, 4, 5 other projects at the same time, and they're being pulled and people are calling them and so on. So you got to be sensitive about that. I think when you're approaching a developer, I think that in my experience, that's the majority of things that are happening. Not that just they're lazy and they don't want to do it.
Right.
It could be, you know, sometimes you have to have a conversation with the manager and find out, and many times you have a conversation with their manager and they are aware. They're very much aware of the history and the past and so on. So they may shift the person and bring somebody else in if it's truly necessary. Many times on the team, I've had a couple different developers or even a couple different technical analysts, and we've just shifted the work from one to the other. So, but that's a careful balance, being careful with the person, you care about them, but at the same time, you know, the company's dependent on you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. We are about at time right here, man. It's been,
wow.
Yeah, it's been so good talking
very
with
quick.
you. And man, I think that this was another amazing conversation.
Yeah. Let's just finish off and give you an opportunity to, maybe give some advice or thoughts on project management as a whole. Just, give you the floor and any closing thoughts that you have.
Yeah, good question. I know I just kind of over the full spectrum of project management. I mean, like I said, you got to be a person that's approachable. You've got to be a person that is, I'll just say very familiar with your team. You know who they are, you know what they care about. You find out what their strengths are. So that's a huge part. Just this whole idea of being collaborative with people. You're approachable. You're collaborative with people. And you've got their best interest at heart. The other thing is just that you have a good working knowledge of project management skills. Not so much project management software. Well, I use MS Project or I use ViewPath. I mean, to be honest, many projects you could use Excel, get by almost as bad as well. So, those approachable, a team player, you're invested. Those are some of the things I think more from the people side. Even more so than the technical side. If you got the people side, you can work and understand and figure out much of the technical side and even the language. So I think it's got to be people first.
That's good, man. That's good.
That's a great way to end it. Thank you so much, Clint, for coming on. That people first. It seems like it's coming back to that.
Yeah. You want to run a successful project tech, it's communication, it's people, man. I mean, that's just what it always comes down to. So thank you so much to our guest, Clint Miles. And we will be back in 2 weeks with another amazing guest. We will see you guys soon.
Thank you so much.